Hey, what's up, you guys? Todd Falcone here. Welcome back. All right, so here's the thing. A lot of times I get asked, how did you get into speaking? How did you get into speaking and training? And my answer is it was never part of the plan. There are some people that, they want to, that's their goal. Their goal is to be a presenter. Their goal is to be a motivational speaker. Their goal is to teach and train people about motherhood or parenting. And that's their whole objective, is to go around giving talks and sharing their level of expertise. In my case, most people don't even know this unless they ask me in an interview, but I never planned on being a speaker or a trainer. That was not like on my radar whatsoever. It was never like, okay, one of these days I'm going to be a speaker or a trainer. When I first started in network marketing almost 30 years ago, I was scared to death to even have a conversation with somebody, let alone stand on the platform and give a presentation. Actually, the funny thing is, during the initial training phases when I started in network marketing, we would actually have Saturday trainings and weekend trainings where one of the segments or one of the parts of the training was how to deliver our presentation. Back in the day, we did primarily live presentations in front of an audience. We were doing live briefings Monday through Friday, Tuesday, Thursday nights, and they were always delivered by somebody in the office. So everybody in the office was trained on how to give a presentation, and I was very shy about getting on the platform. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And one day I had a guy that was kind of leading the office, and we had a group of people, just I think Tuesday or Thursday night, I remember it was a nighttime event or nighttime briefing, and we always do the presentation, we take a little break, getting the negative energy out of the room, and the people that are interested will stay for this little 4 steps to getting started in the business thing. Well, in the break, my buddy Ben looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Falcone, catch," and he chucks at something at me, and I catch it, and it's keys, and it's the keys to the office. And he goes, "Hey, the office is yours. You're doing the 4-step training. I'm out of here. I'm going to go open up another office." And I was standing there like, in a panic mode, like, oh my gosh, what? Like, I have to stand up there and do the presentation now. See, I had been trained on doing the presentation over and over again. I'd seen the presentation over and over, like hundreds of times. And even though I would have never volunteered, he was smart to volunteer me, because in this case, I was ready. Like, it's one thing to take a brand new person and go, hey, go up there and talk, when they don't know anything about what it is that they're about to talk about. But when you've got somebody who's ready, in this case, it was me that was ready, he put me up on the platform, and I was scared to death. I was sweating profusely. I was super nervous. My mouth was super dry. I'm sure people could tell that, oh my gosh, this poor kid. But that was the beginning of me standing on the platform the very first time. And then through my experience in network marketing, and probably through your experience if you're involved in network marketing, is you're going to be asked to do things like maybe host a conference call or talk on a Zoom or share at an event, share your testimonial or something like that. And even though a lot of people think, man, I'm never going to speak, and I understand that, and I don't know where this comes from, but people would rather fear death over fear speaking. I don't know about that. I'd rather live and suffer the consequences of getting on a platform and, being able to try to handle myself rather than die. I value life pretty much. So, but I have to maybe look at the roots of that particular phrase or that comment that people say all the time. People fear death more than, or fear public speaking more than they do death. But that was like step one for me. And I'm going to go into some things for you guys in this particular episode to just share with you how to be a better speaker. Fast forward many years later, I had a very long and successful career in the field as a network marketing distributor. I'd spent 11 years with a company that went out of business. And when that happened, I had a guy call me up and he said, "Hey, will you come and speak at one of my events?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess. What do you want me to talk about?" Like, because I had really never spoken to an open kind of general network marketing audience. It was always people on my team or in my company. And I was like, "What am I going to talk about?" He's like, "Dude, just come and talk about how you build your business." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I know how to build my business." So I went and talked about it, which led me into this whole, now 14 years later, I'm speaking full time. I've spoken in, I think, 29 countries now around the world. And while I'd never planned on being a professional speaker, it's what I do for a living now. So here's the first thing I would suggest to you. Number one is pick a subject on something that you're, like a comfortable subject, something that you feel really good about. And it doesn't have to be, if you're a network marketer, it doesn't have to be about network marketing. You might be into fishing or skiing or hunting or, you know, vegan eating or any other, I mean, there's a myriad of different subjects. Think right now, what are you really good at? Or what are you super interested in? Or what's something that you could easily have a conversation? What's something that you have, it's just easy for you to have a conversation about because you know it, like the back of your hand. Like if somebody said, hey, Todd, come up and I want you to speak at this engineering conference and talk about mechanical engineering, I'd be like, I'm not coming to talk. I don't know anything about mechanical. I don't even know what that is. So I wouldn't do that because it's an uncomfortable subject. So I think the starting point in becoming a better speaker or presenter, somebody who is either on a platform or a virtual platform like a conference call, a webinar, a Zoom, Facebook Live, Facebook video, something like that, is to pick something, some subject that really is easy for you to talk about. And everybody, you know, everybody watching this or plugging into the podcast here, if you're listening to this via podcast, you have something that you're really good at, something that you've done for a long period of time that's super easy for you to talk about. To me, that's the starting point. I think a lot of people in network marketing think that, you know, I got to talk about network marketing. Well, I mean, if that's your area of expertise, or if it's easy for you to deliver content on that, that's one thing. And it's the same thing with like somebody starting a blog. I think it's a lot easier to start a blog or to get involved in a Facebook group or involved in networking groups where you have something that's a very sincere interest to you, where you can engage people in conversation in that group or in that environment because you know it and it's something that is very close to your heart. So it's easy for you to have that kind of conversation. So you know, like for me, when I was asked to speak at this event, it was based on my, at that point, I think 16 years of being involved in network marketing day in and day out every single day. So it was my personal area of expertise. Now, if somebody came along and said, hey, Todd, can you talk about fishing? You know, I've been fishing my entire life. I've been skiing my entire life. I could very easily teach skiing. I could very easily teach about, you know, how to ski in the trees or how to avoid tree wells or how to ski groomers or how to ski powder or how to ski moguls or how to jump off of a cliff and land properly or whatever it might be, because I've been doing that for, in my case, almost, I think, over 40 years actually. So whatever the subject is, number one is pick something that you feel super comfortable with. And I think that would be a starting point. It doesn't have to be like, oh my gosh, I got to talk about network marketing. Not that you couldn't talk about network marketing and entrepreneurship or your journey through it. I mean, you certainly could. But to me, that's a starting point because it's something that you're very, very comfortable with and it's easy to have a conversation. Just like when you meet somebody and you go, oh, what are you into? And they're like, oh, I love the Grateful Dead. And you're like, what? You love the Grateful Dead? Oh my gosh, I've gone to over 100 shows. And they talk about every set list and every show that they've ever been to and every experience that they've ever had. And, you know, 5 hours later, you're still talking about, you know, all of your Grateful Dead concerts. It's like, it's effortless. And so I think for somebody who wants to get comfortable on a platform, whether it's in front of people or on a virtual platform where you're not literally in front of somebody, but maybe in front of a camera like I am right now in this case, or in, you know, like a Facebook Live or a Zoom or anything like that, then and it's just an easier experience for you to have. So that's number one, is make sure you talk about something that you're super comfortable with. Number two is, I say, you know, gather additional information around that particular subject matter. So whatever that subject matter is, find different groups or places that you might be able to go and gather more information so that you're actually adding to your resources of what you're able to talk about, adding to your knowledge base around that subject. So if it was powder skiing, well, you know, and I really want to talk more about powder skiing, I could very easily go into, you know, Facebook groups or get involved with ski organizations or ski clubs or reading magazines around that or publications, anything that's going to give me a greater knowledge base so that I can acquire even more knowledge on that thing that I already have a sincere personal passion for, so that you have more to share, more to talk about as you grow your like I said, your knowledge database and your skill sets in speaking on that particular thing. I don't know if I guess I'll number these. Number three, maybe I'll skip the numbers. I don't even have them numbered, but I think another thing would be, look, you gotta speak, right? So if you're gonna get good, you can't get good at something that you never do. It's impossible to get good at something that you never do. So in spite of not being good at something, you do need to still put yourself out there. So volunteering to, you know, take introductions on a conference call, volunteering to share your story on a Zoom, volunteering at the local, if you're into dogs and cats, at the local pet shelter to talk about care for kitties and dogs or something, if that's your thing. And so the more times that you can volunteer, I can tell you this, like the first time that I was asked in this open environment by this guy, I was super nervous. In fact, I was probably very nervous the first, I don't even know, probably 20 or 30 times that I got up on the platform in front of an audience. And, you know, I'd be fine in the morning, and then, an hour before I was cool, and then 15 minutes before I know I'm going to be invited to speak, it's like, oh my gosh, now I'm getting super nervous. My heart rate would elevate. I'd check my pulse. I'd be like, okay, my mouth would get dry. By the way, speaking of that, like here, so I always have water at my desk. So don't feel shy about taking a drink of water. If you're nervous, and then what happens when you're nervous, instead, I'm not a really big fan of, I mean, look, you want to be authentic, but you don't have to tell people you're nervous. Oh, I'm scared to death. I'm so nervous. Most of the people that are watching, and I've had a lot of people come to me and like, oh my gosh, I was so nervous when I was getting ready to do that presentation. When I was doing that presentation, I'm like, you rocked that thing. You didn't look nervous at all. So I think if you say I'm super nervous, that's something you can decide for yourself. I've never been a big fan of saying, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous, bear with me. I mean, you're laying yourself out there and people will feel for you for sure, but I don't think that's necessary, because then like some people in the audience might like, oh, okay, let me see if I can tell if they're nervous. You know, now you've kind of pointed at something that wasn't really necessary to say. You're nervous, fine, you know that. The rest of the audience, they really don't know it. Like a majority of the audience is not going to know that you're nervous. So don't necessarily bring that into the conversation when you're volunteering to speak. Another thing, time. Like if you're given 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or you're given an allotted time frame to speak, don't constantly be looking at your watch and, oh, I've only got 3 minutes, or I've only got 60 seconds, oh, I got 27 seconds, okay, my time's up. I've seen people do that. And look, one part of that is you want to stay on the clock. So any presentation that you do, it's important that you practice it. And if you are doing something where you've been asked to speak, let's say at your national conference, for example, and share your success story in network marketing, then you would definitely want to make sure let's say you have a 10-minute slot. You got to make sure you practice that 10-minute slot and know that you're able to deliver whatever those pieces of content are within that allotted time frame. It's just being professional. There are some very unprofessional people in the speaking world that, you know, the clock, they've got a timer right in front of them. It's ticking down from 60 minutes down to nothing, and they go 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20, 30 minutes over their time, and it interrupts the entire rest of the presentation. The entire day is now off because somebody decided to be egotistical and not watch the clock. So these timers are in front of you. It's pretty easy to see what how much time you got left. And if you start running out of time, let's say you didn't pre-plan, you didn't practice enough, and oh my gosh, I got 4 more points, you don't necessarily need to give the other 4 points. Just wrap up your presentation and stay on time. I think that's super important. Regarding putting together an actual presentation, my suggestion to you, and I learned this a long time ago, it's called chunking. And chunking is this whole idea of taking a presentation. Let's say, for example, you have a 20-minute presentation. And when you look at it, especially if you've never spoken that much, you're thinking, oh my gosh, well, how am I going to, you're going to just sweat over putting together a 20-minute presentation. How am I going to deliver this presentation? And it's just not a good feeling. I've been in that situation early on in my speaking career. Instead of looking at it like a 20-minute presentation, what you do is you chunk it out into small little segments. So you have the introduction. You get up on the platform and say, hey guys, great to be here. You know, whatever you're saying in the introduction. And then you have maybe, let's say in a 20-minute presentation, you might have 4 salient points that you're going to make. Well, each one of those points might be 4 minutes. Well, 4 minutes is easy to manage over 20 minutes. So point number 1, 4 minutes. Point number 2, 4 minutes. Point number 3, 4 minutes. Point number 4, 4 minutes. And then you wrap it up and close it. Okay, so here's the deal. You want to chunk it out into small pieces of information, whatever those are. So you can look at it and go, okay, here's chunk number 1. My first point is, and then you can talk about, anybody can talk about a point of comfortable subject matter for 3 to 5 minutes. And point number 1, point number 2, point number 3, point number 4, and then the close. That is something that will serve you really, really well in delivering either a real presentation in front of a live audience or in a virtual platform, either recorded video, live Facebook video, live Zooms. The other thing is, don't feel ashamed about using visual aids for yourself. So most of the time, in fact, even right now, you don't see it, but right here just to the right, I have a giant whiteboard and there's just like two words on each line, so I make sure I remember what I wanted to say in this particular episode. But it's not like you want to have a visual aid and you're staring at a piece of paper. I'll pull a piece of paper. Okay, I have to read from the piece of paper. Nor do you want to use visual aids where your slide is like 2 paragraphs of information. I've seen presenters literally go up on stage. They have these slides that are a full paragraph, and they're quite literally reading from the paragraph. The only time you can really get away with that is in for example, a webinar. Let's say you're doing a webinar. You can have slides that have almost everything that you're going to say on them, because they don't see. It actually helps, in fact, in a webinar type of format, because you'll throw a slide up, and let's say I'm starting the webinar. Hi guys, this is Todd Falcone. Great to have you on the webinar. Today we're going to talk about 5 ways to be a better speaker, and that might literally be scrolling through on the screen on a PowerPoint, for example. I would say that's probably the only situation, because they don't see or even know that you're reading. Even though you may be reading, you don't want to be sounding like you're reading, just because of the dynamics of that type of presentation, because they're typically not seeing your face, they're just seeing the screen. But in an environment like this right now, if you're watching me on video, some of you might just be getting the audio version of this on the podcast, that it's okay to have some sales aid or some visual aids in front of you. If you're doing it on an iPhone, for example, you could just put up a little Post-it board right to the side of your screen, and you'll have the little points that you might be saying in that Facebook video or that Facebook Live video or whatever. Or even if I'm doing a Zoom training, which I do a lot of Zoom trainings, I have a big screen in front of me, and I know I need to look at the camera, which is right at the top of the screen, but I can literally tape an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper right on the screen itself, and they don't see that I've got notes in front of me on the points that I want to discuss. But what it does is it keeps you on track. You know, one of the main reasons, like for example, I can sit here and do a training for 2 or 3 hours on any subject related to making money in network marketing, prospecting, recruiting, team building, leadership, building in depth, social media, whatever it might be, and not necessarily have to have something to look at. I do it more for the audience's benefit and to make sure that I'm keeping on track, because if you don't have some kind of slide 1, slide 2, or point 1, point 2, point 3, it can be pretty easy to kind of get off track, and then sometimes you can get off of your timing and find yourself, and what you don't want to be doing again is rushing at the end. And I've done many presentations, thousands of them at this point, where sometimes I've gone into a subject longer than I anticipated, and then I know I got 3 other points that are on my slides, but instead of trying to rush through them, I just don't include those as part of that presentation. So that's really important. So this whole idea of chunking is very important. 5-minute chunks, even if you're going to deliver a 5-minute. In fact, this would be a great starting point. You're totally scared. I've never done anything. Just do a 5-minute Facebook Live. It doesn't have to be a 20-minute Facebook Live. Talk about one subject for 5 minutes. Do that repeatedly, over and over and over again. And the repeated exposure to that activity is going to help you improve your confidence related to it. Like over time. Again, I mentioned I've been nervous probably the first 20 times. Now I go up on a platform in front of 10, 12,000, 15,000 people, and people ask me, do you get nervous? I'm like, I don't. I have adrenaline pumping through my body because I'm super excited to get up there and share, but I wouldn't say that I'm nervous. My heart rate might be slightly elevated, but it's not a nervousness slightly elevated. It's more of an excitement slightly elevated kind of situation. So, but for you guys that are looking to improve your speaking skills, you've got to record yourself. Every single time that I speak and there's a camera in the room, I get a copy of the presentation so I can go through it and I can look at what worked and what didn't. Some of you have heard me talk about success is this. Repeat what works, delete what doesn't. Same thing with speaking. If I see that I made a point and the point didn't go over so well, I'm not going to use that point again. Or if I told a different story that I hadn't shared before and the audience response was amazing, I'm going to repeat that. So think about that. If you want to get good at this, you need to practice, you need to volunteer, you need to start putting yourself out there. Using visual aids is fine. Keeping water on the platform is not a problem. You can if it's a real platform, you can put a bottle of water up there. If your mouth is getting dry, you can grab the bottle of water. I'll take another quick drink. Hang on. You can take a sip, lubricate your mouth, not a big deal, and then just continue with what you're talking about. Because look, a dry mouth and a microphone doesn't work very well. So if you're gonna if you think you're gonna get nervous, bring a bottle of water up there with you. Have it on a table. You don't need to hold on to the bottle of water. Better to have it on the table. You can walk over the table. take a swig out of it, or if you're doing a Facebook Live or Zoom or anything, you can keep it on your desk. I always have water at my desk at all times, just something that I do. Hydrating is important. Another thing, and I'm going to get ready to end out this particular episode. Ask for feedback. You know, you do a presentation. You know, hey, how'd you think I did? Do you have any words of wisdom for me? Can you give me any feedback, positive or negative, on my presentation? And being willing to accept that feedback, whether it's positive or negative. And if it's positive, awesome. Continue to do that thing that you did. Repeat it, right? Repeat the positive. And if it's negative, okay, well, I didn't work out so well. I'm not going to do that again. And the last thing I'll say is get yourself involved in something where you can. You have the opportunity to speak. Maybe take a class. I've taken presentation and platform skills training. I took an entire week of training. I was well into my speaking career, went to Los Angeles, spent an entire week doing a presentation and platform skills training course, which for me was interesting because I was one of the very few professional speakers in that room at the time, and it literally rebuilt me from the ground up. It was pretty cool because I had never taken a professional speaking course. You can get involved in something like a Toastmasters. You can get involved in your chambers of commerce. You can get involved in different organizations of interest for you, meetups, BNIs, whatever the organization is, anything that's going to give you an opportunity to learn the skill of speaking. Because as a network marketer, whether you think you're going to be speaking or not, there's a very high likelihood that having good speaking skills is going to serve you well in this business, and you're very likely going to be invited to talk about something. Great place to start is talking about something that right now is something super easy for you to talk about. So that's it for today. If you're watching me on toddfalcone.com, make sure you plug into the Network Marketing Mastery section. We've got some free resources for you right there. If you're listening, if you're watching me on YouTube or you're listening to the podcast, head over to toddfalcone.com/episode 11. And you can see the rest of the story there. Have an amazing day. Stay fearless, my friends. We will see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.